In the summer of 2019, me and some friends went on a road trip to explore Ireland. We explored some of the famous touristy spots, the beautiful scenery, the rugged coastline, and of course we had to experience the nightlife. We camped the majority of the time, spent most nights enjoying the festivities, and I managed to wangle a few megalithic sites into the trip as well.
Okay, hello. I'm stood in front of a combination of a dolmen and a stone circle. We're in Ireland. We're about to start a megalithic road trip going all over the country, showing different standing stones and all the sites that they've got on this beautiful island. As I said, this is a dolmen stone circle combination. It's one of about 60 sites. We've just done a walk around and then we've seen ones like 52, 53, 54. This is number 7 of the 60 that are still remaining. They think that there was probably a lot more. They know of at least 20 that were destroyed in the last few hundred years by farmers and all of our sort of modern day activities. And there's some really interesting facts about some of these different tombs, they call them here. They have found at one of these 30 kilos of remains of burnt bones and burnt bodies, basically. So that's a pretty interesting point. There was a viewpoint at the top there where you are supposed to be able to see 30 of these tombs. Even some of them are positioned on top of the hills that are surrounding here. So that's also a really interesting fact. But one of the things that I've noticed from all these trips around the world is how sometimes these dolmen and these megalithic sites are just out in the middle of nowhere and there's nothing for miles and miles around. And then you come places and you get clusters of them. So there's fields of dolmen in, well, plenty of places, Germany, Jordan, Israel, like they're pretty much all over the world, these clusters of dolmen, and also they're just positioned on their own as well all over the world. So why the megalithic builders would have suddenly decided to put so many close together, God knows. But it's called the megalithic cemetery. As I said, it's Carrowmore, not far from Sligo. Oh, I didn't mention there's alignments here as well. There's certain tombs of these line up with different hills and different points around the landscape in the different points of the year, you know, solstices, and one of them was lined up with one of the pagan festivals. I forget which one, but again, that's a pretty interesting point. So yeah, it's a beautiful day. Let's hope we have more weather like this. We've had some pretty shocking weather so far on Ireland, hence buying this t-shirt that basically says all of the seasons. It's just peeing it down in Ireland. We've had plenty of rain, but
the structures have very specific positioning, and it is the structure known as Giant's Grave that aligns with the top of mountains at specific times of the year and certain Celtic dates such as Samhain. Though it must be said that the entire site has undergone a lot of restoration due to ageing and damage done, particularly from quarrying in the 19th century. Carrowmore is one of the oldest and largest tomb complexes in Ireland, constructed from 2 different types of rock, one crystalline and another more chalky in nature. The ruins are believed to be at least 7,000 years old, with the oldest estimated to have been built around 5,400 BC, and it is unknown what was there before the Ice Age. It is believed the burial remains found could have been placed there thousands of years after the site was built, with bones discovered in the Giant's Grave and cremated remains found in the surrounding satellite tombs. The complex shares a legend with another site that we visit later on in the film. The legend states that there was a witch who flew over the area with an apron full of stones, and she accidentally dropped them, scattering them across the region. Alternative researchers believe the complex is like a temple that utilises cosmic and earth energies, and there was certainly a lot of energy slapping us in the face at our next site.
yeah, you going? All right, I'm going to have to hold the microphone. So we are in a place called the Burren. It's like a nature reserve kind of area, and you get a lot of this kind of erosion here. There's a lot of limestone, it's a big limestone plateau, and there's all these grikes forming in it and lots of erosion. It's also famous for hundreds of dolmen, and this is the most popular and a really beautiful one behind us. And obviously the weather is atrocious, the wind's coming in like this, so I would like to pay tribute to these guys for actually having the balls to help me out with this, because this is really atrocious conditions. So well done, guys.
Thank you.
Not much to say about this one. It looks really beautiful. I wish the weather wasn't like this, because it's like a sculpture up against the lovely countryside, as I've said at a few sites before. They found 33 sets of remains here, bones basically, and they think that they were placed there over a 600-year period, and that they were probably moved from other locations around the area. So that's quite interesting about this one. It's the most famous. There's loads of people coming here. It looks really beautiful. And if the weather wasn't so rubbish, I would be taking loads of photos of this, but I honestly think it's time for us to get back in the car. Thank you and good night.
This is the best known and most widely photographed of the approximately 170 dolmens in Ireland. Next up, we visit a rather special specimen on the other side of the country.
Okay, so we're in Brownshill dolmen, not far from Carrowmore, on the east coast of Ireland. Now, I've wanted to come to this dolmen for about 10 years. I've been talking about this in certain videos of mine. And the reason it interests me so much is because of this massive capstone on top. It's supposed to be, or it was known as, the biggest in Europe. It's 150 tons. I went to one in Spain and saw Dolmen de Mengo, which has got a capstone that's 180 tons, but that's covered over with earth, and it's called a passage grave. And this is a portal dolmen because it's freestanding and there's nothing over the top of it. You can see it's definitely balancing on some orthostats, or the upright stones. It's slanting quite a lot. But you'll be able to see from here the thickness of this capstone is pretty impressive. It's probably 2 meters in certain parts, I think. And the thing that's interesting is it's the density of the rock. This is granite. So, you know, just how they would have moved this really heavy stone using logs and rope and balancing on top of that. You know, this is hard for me to believe, that's for sure. It's a really cool place to spend some time. Yeah, we were speaking to a local lady we met here, and she said that she one time felt energies when she was sat inside it. So it's very interesting because lots of people online are saying very similar things when they come to these sites. They feel a connection to other realms and that kind of thing. There we go, I'm going to go inside. Not sure if I'll feel anything. A lot of crystal in these rocks. I've got a geologist friend who's holding the camera right now, and he says that this would have a high level of crystals in this rock. Due to the way it's formed, he was giving me the whole spiel about metamorphic rock and how it's formed under pressure and heat. But again, a lot of crystals in these rocks is something I notice. So many of these sites around the world, I've shown in loads of my films, like lines of crystal going through menhirs and dolmen and stone circles as well. All right, so we have come about 5 miles from Cork, on the other side of the river. Cork Harbour is just up here if you follow this estuary down. We've come here to show a dolmen on the other side of the river there. You can probably just about see a white rock, looks like it's a couple of tons, and that is the capstone of a dolmen. Obviously the tides come in and we're not going to bother walking across there, so we're just going to have to see what we see from here. It does look like there is a larger structure, maybe it's a massive sort of portal dolmen or something, because there are some rocks behind it and they look like they're kind of close together and forming some kind of structure. But as I said, we're not going to bother wading across. We just wanted to show this because these sites generally aren't close to the coast, and certainly I've never seen any on what is basically a riverbed. So I thought this one was quite interesting to show you. And a rather cool little site, I think, but on to the next.
There is another large dolmen not far from Rostellan. It is a beautiful example of a portal dolmen with a huge capstone at least 4 meters in length. This type of dolmen is found not only all over Ireland but also all over the world, with an estimated 90 to 100,000 dolmen on the surface of the planet. The largest is found in South Korea, with a capstone estimated to weigh more than 300 tons, and amazingly there are more than 30,000 dolmen in the two Koreas combined.
How can it be that a few families rule the world and unfolding before our eyes? Before our eyes.
Another structural style of dolmen is called a passage grave, which is more like a building than a sculpture. A building that is often, but not always, found encased within a mound.
So we are now in, where are we? We're about 30 kilometres from Limerick, south of the city of Limerick. and we've come to a place called Lough Gur or Lough Gur. There are quite a few megalithic sites all in a sort of 1 square kilometre area. This being a dolmen or a tomb. It's really interesting actually. I wasn't expecting it. I didn't know much about this as I turned up, but we've read the sign and it seems to have been used over the ages. They found the remains of some pottery, and there was 8 adult bodies and 4 children skeletons found inside, and funnily enough they weren't cremated. They've also found cremated remains. When they found all the bones in the dolmen, they were scattered all over the place, so they think they've been disturbed. It says on the sign that a woman used to live in this in the early 1800s. A woman lived in here, and they think that maybe she scattered the bones around. But I've made the point in my videos before how these sites could have been used at many stages over, over our history, and that we are dating to a particular point in that history. For example, I think they say the pottery remains are 2,500 BC or from that age, but that might not have been the builders of this site. That's really cool. There's about 5 capstones on top here. 2 sort of like layers to the dolmen. There's this layer and then this one here. So in total, there's probably about 30 or 40 stones in here. And also you'll probably be able to see around the outside, there's a lot of other megalithic blocks as well. Almost looks like this was a gigantic mound of some kind, or maybe another structure, we don't know. It's interesting, actually, the stone that's used seems to be a little bit different to a lot of the megaliths in Ireland. This is a lot more porous, it seems to be eroding quite well, and there's even some stones the other side that have got holes right the way through. Reminds me of the rollright stones in England, actually, because that's quite striking how stones are more or less sort of dissolving. But yeah, 5 capstones on top. This one here is probably the biggest, and I would say that's got to be at least sort of 3 or 4 tons. And again, how they dragged these and built these structures in their simple caveman ways, I've got no idea. Alrighty, I want to get down in here. Alright, so next to that big wedge tomb is Ireland's biggest stone circle. This is where we are now. It's absolutely peeing it down, so I'm kind of trying to hide from the rain a little bit, as is George, my trusted cameraman here. I want to show how big it is. It's 46 meters in diameter. I'm not sure how many stones there are. There's probably at least 100 here, all ranging in different sizes. You can see on this side in the background here, there's some small ones, and then the biggest one is, funnily enough, just over here, and it's probably, I'm going to guess that that's around 15 tons. It's a massive stone you got over there. So they really vary in size, from sort of those that are about half a metre tall and probably 1/4 ton to those that are probably 3.5, 4 meters tall. There's also on this stone over here, loads of people are putting like best wishes and coins and gifts, it looks like. There's some crystals and there's even like a little harmonica, which is funny. And they've done some excavation here. So they found hundreds of bits of flint. I think they found some charcoal remains, and they've used that to date this area again. It's part of a complex that is 3 stone circles. There's some standing stones as well. There's that wedge tomb or the portal dolmen that we saw. There's some villages and ancient settlements. There's stories of fairies and a city that was buried by the lake as well. So there's all sorts of mythology and stories associated with this region. And the tourist information says 6,000 years of living history and all that. So I think there's a big history in this area. But as I said, it's absolutely peeing it down. So I think we're going to carry on and find some other interesting megalithic sites.
Stone circles are another type of megalithic site found all over the world, particularly in Western Europe, but also in places such as India, Japan, the USA and South Africa. There are around 200 stone circles found in Ireland, with the vast majority in the southwest in County Cork, which is where we visited our next site.
Okay, so this is Drombeg Stone Circle. It's actually quite a famous stone circle for Ireland. We've had loads of visitors come. We basically camped over there last night, and all last night and this morning. They started early. We've had tons and tons of visitors, so it's really popular. And we're about an hour's drive west of Cork, or
very close to Skibbereen, basically, right on the south coast of Ireland there. You can see a stone circle with 17 stones. The front two here are known as the portal stones. These are the biggest in the stone circle, and it's said to be the entrance to it as well. And one really interesting fact, similar to Stonehenge, is that off in that direction there on December the 21st, you can see the sun setting. So it lines up for the winter solstice. It lines up with this recumbent stone. You can probably see through there that there is a stone lying down. Now this is called a recumbent stone circle for that reason, because you have this recumbent stone. It's something that I've seen in Aberdeen, actually, in Scotland. In Aberdeenshire, they have roughly 100 of these recumbent stone circles. They say that they're calendars, although I've questioned that in a video that I made, because I don't know why they would have so many calendars in such a small area and then none around the rest of the country. On the sign it says that these are the two tallest stones, which is certainly true, but then it says that the stones, as they lead round towards this recumbent stone, get smaller, but actually they kind of get smaller, and then there's a bigger one here, and I'm not sure why they say that on that sign, to be honest with you. They did some excavating, and they found 5 fire pits in the centre here, and they found remains as well. I think there was a vase that was covered in ash, which was the burial remains of a body of some kind. They dated that to, I think it was 1100 to 800 BC. So I would suggest that whoever was doing that burial ceremony wasn't necessarily the builders of this stone circle. As I've said before in my videos, it's likely that when these stone circles were built, future generations came along and used these sites. So yeah, this is the recumbent stone. Right next to it is a really interesting one, because again, in loads of my videos from around the world, I've said how a lot of these stones have a high crystal content, and this one's got lines of quartz going right through it. In particular, there's a really big strip there, and on the other side here, there's a massive line of quartz crystal, and I'm not going to go into it again, but I've talked about the piezoelectric effect and how this could be being used to maybe manipulate or absorb or use in some way the ley line energies that these stone circles and all these megalithic sites are often placed on. Off in this direction, you will be able to see like a field of about 50 stones, all these just random stones lying around, and then you've got the 2 structures off in the distance there. This one off on the right hand side here, they call them huts. So it looks like actually 2 kind of stone circles at the moment, and there's one that's probably about 3 meters across and another that's 4 or 5, and they just say, I think that they were dwellings of some kind. And then this one here is a little bit more interesting. You've got again, like there's a ring of stones, and then within that there is a well and a rectangular kind of chamber where they found remains again, and they say they used to cook meat in there and then use the well for cooking, and it also has like a little stream running out of it as well, which is pretty interesting, but I'm not sure exactly what was going on with this structure. Again, maybe this was used at a later date. They just sort of, you know, found the stone circle here and then they came along and built those. But it's a really interesting site. I can see why there's got so many visitors come here. It's really cool. The view is fantastic. It's a really beautiful place to camp last night. Surrounded by cows and really very peaceful.
I am often asked how easy it is to find the sites we visit. Most of the time it's not too difficult, but not too far from Drombeg there is another type of site that took us far too long to find.
Right, me sideways was this to find. That's an outtake. This was a to find. Alrighty. So behind me here is, it's a megalithic structure that I quite like actually. I don't know why. I think it's the least common of the megalithic sites. It's a stone row, obviously a row of stones. I've seen them in places like Portugal. I filmed a few, Germany also, and they're found mainly in the UK, in the sort of southwest part of England, in the Dartmoor National Park. There's loads of these, often leading up to a stone circle. Callanish as well, and Avebury, you've got these rows where there's actually 2 lines of them leading up to a stone circle.
But then you also get just lines like this. There's just 5 of these stones. I'm not sure if there would have been more originally, but for the moment here, we've just got these 5 out in this beautiful scenery. We're right in the southwest of Ireland now, and there's loads of mountains and cliffs and beautiful woodland. Here we have the 5 stones. These are quartz crystal. This one here in particular, my geologist friends told me that that is chock-a-block full of quartz. So it's again something we've seen in all these megalithic sites, or a lot of them. They found little shards, little bits of flint scattered around the bottom here. And they say, really interestingly enough, on the sign, this is pointing to the northeast, and it points towards a place on the horizon where the moon reaches the most northerly point in its 18.6 year cycle. So the moon obviously sets in different places on the horizon, and as I said, in this 18.6 year cycle, this is pointing right to the most northerly point, which I find pretty interesting because a lot of these sites are aligned in terms of, you know, solstices and sun setting, and there's loads of flies here. Yeah, so these ones look a little bit like they've been shaped. These all look like they've got cuts on them, really. These look like massive chalk ices. These are like cuboid or rectangular, whatever you want to call it. But these look like they're pretty flat surfaces, which is again something I saw in some of the dolmen in Germany and the stone circle in Germany as well. They don't have that natural sort of boulder looking surface to them. But yeah, it's cool. It's a really cool, beautiful place and a very rare megalithic site. So this would probably be the only one we see in the film, but I wanted to just show this because it is one of the megalithic structures that you find around the world. But we're in an area where there are tons and tons of megaliths, circles, menhirs, dolmen, so we're going to go and find a few more.
There are indeed many sites in the area, so many we would need weeks to explore them. Although we did visit one last menhir before leaving the area, which seemed to really help my hangover.
This is Ballycrovane menhir. It's pretty big, 17 foot. It's pretty interesting, and again in a beautiful location right on the coast. These standing stones, again, when you look at all these sites, they're not so interesting when you just come and see one. It's when you start to piece them all together, and there are hundreds over Ireland and the UK, and they're found all over the world. This one's pretty cool because it's got something I haven't seen before, or a few things I haven't seen before. You never really get stones at the bottom. It's usually just sticking out the ground, but here we've got a base to this structure. There's probably 5 stones at the bottom here. We've got what looks like finger marks, basically, and they're going all the way up the stone. Now we're not sure if this is some kind of evidence of how they cut it, because this looks pretty flat. This surface here is really, really flat. It could be natural, obviously, but with these marks here, that suggests that maybe this was done on purpose. On this side also is pretty interesting because you've got, it's almost like it's half finished. You've got half of it is very flat like this, and the rest is much more as you imagine a rock would look, you know, not flat at all. As I said, pretty big. Again, it's just as I say, it's when you look at them and how they could all be linked on a grid system that they become pretty interesting, these things.
In our films, we have talked extensively about telluric energies and the ley lines that run all over the world, forming a grid. This field of research began when Sir Alfred Watkins made his observations along the St Michael's ley line, but since then his research has been added to, and we now have a more extensive idea of the extent of these lines and where they flow. The Becker-Hagen's grid is a recent attempt to map these lines, but we think it will be a lot more complicated when more discoveries have been made. To this day, we are still discovering some of the mathematical relationships both at these sites and between them. The work of Howard Crowhurst, for example, shows the deliberate positioning of the stones and the alignments at Carnac and other sites in Brittany surrounding them. Hugh Newman has done some great work regarding the distances between Giza, the planet's prime meridian, and various ancient and sacred sites. In his book you can find many harmonic distances between these sites, as well as religiously significant sites such as Canterbury, the heart of the Church of England, which is 30 degrees west of Giza. He also gives details of latitudinal harmonics. For example, the Thebes temple in Egypt is 2/7 of the distance between the equator and the North Pole, and Avebury sits 4/7 between the two. He also shows 1 degree between the Greek sites of Delphi, Dodona and Delos, which lie along the Apollo-St Michael's ley line, a line that leads to Ireland and connects to the Boyne Valley and our final collection of sites. Newgrange is one of Ireland's most popular attractions, luring around 200,000 visitors each year, most of which seem to be there on the day we visited. They come to see one of the best and largest examples of a passage grave in Western Europe, although in recent years archaeologists have begun to consider the monument as an ancient temple, a place of astrological, spiritual, religious and ceremonial importance. According to carbon dating, Newgrange was constructed around 3200 BC, at least 600 years before the Giza pyramids and 1,000 years before Stonehenge. It is believed Newgrange was built by a farming community that prospered on the rich lands of the Boyne Valley, built during an age when allegedly the only building tools available were made from stone, wood, antlers or bones. It is built with 200,000 tons of alternating layers of earth and stone sourced from the local vicinity. It is unknown how the larger stones were brought to the site, although it is believed some of the grey wax stone blocks were brought from a beach 20 kilometres away. Some say it took an estimated 30 years, using a workforce of approximately 300 people, suggesting a well-organised society with groups with specialised skill sets. They grooved the top surface of the passage roof stones and built the roof to be waterproof. The corbel construction still hasn't leaked in 5,000 years, not easy considering the amount of rain in Ireland, and all without using any mortar. Newgrange was rediscovered at the end of the 1600s, so there has been significant damage and reconstruction done during that time, although not on the inner chambers. Most of the restoration is controversial among the archaeological community, in particular with regard to the huge quartz wall at the front of the monument. Newgrange is a large circular mound 85 metres in diameter and 13.5 metres tall, with a 19-metre long passageway leading to a large central chamber with 3 smaller chambers leading off from it. The passage stones average around 1.5 metres in height, and many are decorated with carvings. The mound is actually a kidney shape, and around the back there is a section where the perimeter of the mound doesn't connect, almost as if it was a spiral itself. It is ringed by 97 large curbstones, some of which are also engraved with circles, spirals, arcs and chevrons, symbols known collectively as megalithic art. Spirals such as these are found in numerous places around the world, in places such as the USA, Norway, Croatia, Namibia and many more. These intricate and beautifully designed carved stones form the densest collection of megalithic artwork on the planet, resulting in Newgrange and the surrounding mounds being designated a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. One of the most famous examples of art at Newgrange is the triple spiral that has come to symbolise ancient Ireland. The meaning of the artwork is up for debate. Some say it's purely decorative, whilst others believe they have a more symbolic purpose because some of the carvings were in places that would not have been visible. Both burnt and unburnt human bones from at least 2 individuals were found inside the passage, although strangely much of their skeletons were missing, and what was left had been scattered throughout the structure. Artefacts such as marbles, pendants, beads and a bone chisel have been found and are considered by mainstream archaeologists to be grave goods deposited alongside the bodies inside the passage. Evidence has shown that Newgrange was used over a 1,000-year period, and combined with the discovery of only partial remains and astronomical alignments, doubt is cast on the theory suggesting they were tombs. On the winter solstice, the light of the rising sun enters through an opening above the passage entrance, illuminating the inner chamber for just 17 minutes. The alignment is very precise and is thought to have been used to determine the exact day of the solstice, marking the beginning of the new year. Other alignments at the neighbouring sites have also been found, and although they are less precise than Newgrange, it still strengthens the case for the structures being giant calendars. There are numerous myths and legends associated with Newgrange, and one interesting finding was the Roman coins and pendants that were still being found in the 1960s during excavations. Less than 2 kilometres away is the site of Knowth, consisting of a large mound slightly smaller than that found at Newgrange, and 17 smaller satellite tombs. The mound contains 2 passages placed along an east-west line, suggesting an astronomical alignment at the equinoxes. Although due to the rigours of restoration and destruction, the alignments do not occur today. Amazingly, over 200 decorated stones were found during excavations, with the majority carved on the 127 curbstones which encircle the mound. You can clearly see numerous spirals and other typical symbols of the area. Knowth contains more than a third of the total number of examples of megalithic art in Western Europe, and the information signs at the site state that the structure has been used throughout its history.
Right, so we have come away from the hustle and bustle of all those tour buses. Newgrange is probably about 2 kilometres. I guess you can see it off in the distance there. And we've come to another site which is very similar to Newgrange, they say anyway. It's similar in size. This one's actually a little bit bigger, but this hasn't been reconstructed. I think there's over 100 of the curbstones around the outside, and I think there's only 97 there. So this one is slightly bigger, I would say slightly taller as well. And it's similar in size to Silbury Hill that's in Avebury. So we've come here for just a little look around, and it's obviously much more peaceful. And you'll be able to see down in this area here, there's this massive cavity. We're not sure what's going on with this. Maybe it's collapsed or something. Maybe there was a big sort of chamber under there. But we're just guessing when it comes to that. We've seen at I think it's the westerly end, there are 2 entrances. It's really cold inside. When you stand at the entrance there, you can't get in because they put a gate on, but when you stand there you can feel like freezing air coming out, like it was an ice cave or something. And here there is 1 spiral on an entrance stone to the main entrance to what I think would have been 2 tombs. And at Newgrange there is an entrance stone with lots of spirals on it, and there is only 1 tomb over there. All of these cairns in this area have certain myths associated with them. This one was supposed to have been built because a king ordered a tower to be built to the heavens, and then they stopped building because he slept with his sister or something like that. I'm not fully familiar with the whole myth, but there's certainly a lot of mythology with these sites, these cairns in this area, and a lot of the sites all over Ireland as well. So it's been a beautiful, beautiful tour. We've seen a lot of all the different sites. We've seen the dolmen, the standing stones, cairns, stone rows, stone circles. So we've had a really good time. It's absolutely smothered in history. Just behind Tom here, who's holding the camera, you can see the ruins of a church, and then there's also a castle there, and that's a common thing. We've just been coming across ruins all over the place. We've camped next to a few of them, which was really cool. Yeah, so this island is rich in history. It's just, you know, got the Celts and the pagans and all these megalithic sites and castles and churches, and it's a really great place to come and visit, and I think we would all highly recommend it.
Talk about the people.
Oh, the people are bloody lovely. The people are glorious. We've had so much fun with people in pubs, and they're just so friendly. They've got a really good sense of humour about them. And out of all the 87 countries I've been to, I would say that the Irish are the friendliest that I've come across, by quite a long way as well.
They make locking the keys in your car an easy experience.
Yeah, some plonker locked the keys in the car, and it wasn't me. Yeah, so come to Ireland, come and see some of their amazing sites.